Ethics and trust in the investment profession. Here are the 7 sections in this reading. Sections 2 through 7 align very nicely with the 6 learning outcomes. So here we describe ethics, we learn basically what is ethics. In section 3 we describe the role of ethics in defining a profession. In section 4 we identify challenges to ethical behavior. Now in section 5 we talk about the importance of ethical conduct in the investment industry. Ethical conduct is important in any setting, but this section highlights why ethics is particularly important in our industry. In section 6 we learn to distinguish between ethical and legal standards. We will see that ethical standards are not necessarily the same as legal standards. And finally, in section 7, we learn how to describe and apply ethical decision-making frameworks. The introductory segment of this reading gives us a scenario which illustrates the importance of ethical behavior. Imagine that you work at a large financial services firm. There are several departments in this firm. The 2 relevant departments are the research department and the investment banking department. You work here at the research department along with several other research analysts. Your job is to research public companies and then to write reports on them indicating whether the company is performing well or not and whether the stock is overvalued, undervalued or fairly valued. So say these are the various public companies that you and your team are writing reports about. There is also an investment banking group that gets business from some of these public companies. In this research department you have a colleague who is very ambitious and wants to move ahead in this company. He has friends here in the investment banking group, and he finds out that the investment banking group is trying to get business from company X. It turns out that this colleague is also writing a research report on company X. So this colleague does a thorough analysis of company X and finds out that the fundamentals are not very strong. So his honest opinion is that this company is not likely to do too well and the stock is overvalued. But in order to please the senior managers at his company and to help his friends in the investment banking group get this business, he writes a report which speaks very favorably of company X. His thought process is that if I write a favorable report, company X will be happy. Company X will then give business to investment banking, which will make the senior managers of my company happy, and that will be a good thing for my career at this company. So this research report goes out and several clients get this research report. So these are clients who trust the company and trust the research reports that are coming out, and based on these research reports the clients actually buy shares in companies that seem to be performing well or companies which are recommended by the research department. So several of these clients, the research report clients, buy shares of company X based on the report by your colleague. Company X, after a few months, starts reporting weak earnings and the share price crashes, and that causes great damage to these clients. Now these clients are obviously upset. They start writing their feedback on various internet forums. There is an investigation about these research reports and your company, and the investigations determine that the research reports written by your company have been misleading. Now clearly clients and customers start losing trust in your company and they start moving their business to other firms which have untarnished reputations. As business starts coming down, the company downsizes and you lose your job. Now obviously you are very upset and perturbed because all this happened because of no fault of your own. But this story illustrates the importance of ethical behavior. The behavior of this research analyst caused immense damage to clients, to his company, and to people like you working at this company. Now, this might sound like a made-up story, but there are several instances over the last decade where a few people acting unethically have caused immense damage to the whole system, not only to their own firms, but to their clients as well as to stakeholders such as people who had trust in the company. So what this story illustrates is the importance of trust. Trust is a strong belief in the reliability of a person or institution. Now, clearly, customers and clients will want to do business or will want to engage with entities and institutions that they trust. If there is an institution that they don't trust, then immediately they will move their business away from such an institution. So a logical question is, how can an investment management firm earn the trust of clients and potential clients? In a 2013 study on trust, investors indicated that to earn their trust, the top attributes of an investment management firm need to be the following. The firm should have transparent and open business practices. It should take responsible actions to address any issue or crisis, and it should have ethical business practices. Now, these are high-level remarks, and during the course of this reading, we will study the subject of trust in more detail. Many people think that ethical behavior is the same as following the law, but what we will find out in this reading is that ethical behavior goes well beyond following the law, and this will be discussed in detail in section 6. Section 2, Ethics. This section deals with learning outcome A, which is explain ethics. The word ethics comes from the Greek word ethos, which means character or the guiding beliefs or ideals of an individual or a society. Now, taking this one step further, ethical principles or moral principles are beliefs regarding what is good, what is acceptable, and what is obligatory behavior. Similarly, ethical principles and moral principles are beliefs regarding what is bad, unacceptable, or forbidden. Now, there are certain globally recognized ethical principles. So, any society will say that honesty is good, that fairness, justice, diligence are all good things, and that dishonesty is bad, the lack of justice is bad, and so on. But what we'll see is when we go further and we consider, let's say, a given business function such as investment management, then we start getting into some areas where different societies might have different views on what is morally appropriate and what is not. At this stage, we are just focusing on the definition of ethics. Another definition of ethics, which comes straight from the reading, has been reproduced here. Ethics is the study of moral principles, which can be described as the study of good and bad behavior, or the study of making good choices as opposed to bad choices. Now, I'd strongly encourage you to learn what I have said here and here. These are coming straight out of the reading, and this material is quite testable. Ethical conduct is behavior that is consistent with moral and ethical principles and balances self-interest with both the direct and the indirect consequences of the behavior on others. Now, the others are sometimes referred to as stakeholders. These are groups of people or individuals who are impacted by our decisions. Now, go back to the story of the research analyst from the introductory segment. In a myopic sense, the research analyst was obviously concerned about himself. He wanted to move ahead in his career, and to do that, he was trying to impress the people in the investment banking group and his senior managers. Now, clearly, he is a stakeholder, the investment banking people are stakeholders, his managers are stakeholders, the company about whom he was writing research reports, they are stakeholders. So these are the stakeholders he was thinking about. But clearly the groups or individuals impacted by his decisions go well beyond the few categories I've described. Clearly the work done by this research analyst impacted other clients. So these are clients who were using his research reports. Stakeholders also included his colleagues. So I mentioned that you lost your job because of what this research analyst did. So clearly your future was impacted by his actions. So you and the other colleagues at this company were also stakeholders. In a sense, his actions undermined the whole financial system. So at a much broader level, all those who benefit from the financial system were also stakeholders. So as we'll see later, when we do an ethical framework, when we study about decision making using an ethical framework, we have to understand the various stakeholders involved. Coming now to laws and regulations. So every country will have certain laws and regulations. And there are certain basic ethical principles that I talked about earlier, such as honesty, justice, that will be part of the laws and regulations of all countries. However, there will be areas where beliefs and value systems vary from country to country. And a good example in the investment management context is given in this reading. So in some countries, the requirement will be that investment management professionals recommend investments that are suitable for their clients. So let's say in this country, the requirement is that investment managers make recommendations that are suitable for clients. In another country, the requirement will be that investment managers must act in the best interest of clients. So there is a difference between these two sets of regulations that reflect a slightly different value system. So in this particular country, where the requirement is purely based on suitability, it will be okay for an investment manager to identify suitable investments, even though there are other suitable investments that are at a lower cost. So in this country, if the investment manager says here are 2 or 3 suitable investments, the investment manager is following the law. But in this country, where there is an emphasis on doing what is in the best interest of the client, the investment manager should identify all the suitable options and also point out which options are coming at a lower cost. So the slightly different value systems in these two countries will be reflected in the laws and regulations of the two countries. Code of ethics and standards of conduct. Now, laws and regulations are at a country level. You can also have societies or institutions such as the CFA Institute that come up with a code of ethics for their society or their institution. And the classic example is the CFA Institute Code of Ethics. Now, the CFA Institute spans countries across the world, and people who become part of the CFA Institute need to follow the code of ethics of the CFA Institute. The code of ethics provides a written set of principles that people who belong to this institution or society must follow. Now, many institutions and societies take this one step further and come up with specific rules or conduct that correspond to the code of ethics. And the CFA Institute has done this. The CFA Institute has established standards of professional conduct that members of the CFA Institute must follow. The standards of conduct serve as benchmarks for the minimally acceptable behavior of community members and can help clarify the code of ethics. So as I said earlier, the code of ethics gives basic principles, but how do those principles apply in your particular context? That is what comes out of the standards of conduct. Now, as I said before, from an exam perspective, it's important that you learn all these points that I have identified on this slide. These have come out of the reading, and they are based on the sorts of questions that are given in the curriculum examples. Section 3, Ethics and Professionalism. First, let's just understand the distinction between a job and a profession. So, a job is any occupation where you are paid money and you need to do something. A vocation goes one step further. According to this reading, a vocation is a job or occupation to which someone is particularly well suited and is very dedicated. A profession is the ultimate evolution of a job or an occupation. A profession is based on specialized knowledge and skills, it's based on service to others, and it is practiced by members who share and agree to adhere to a common code of ethics. So, if you think about the investment management profession, it's clearly a profession because it's based on specialized knowledge and skills, it's based on service to others. So, as we will see later, the work that you do as an investment management professional benefits society at large, and if you are a member of the CFA Institute, then you agree to adhere to a common code of ethics. Even if you are not a member of the CFA Institute, there is still a code of ethics that you are expected to follow as an investment management professional. Now, professionals use their specialized knowledge and skills to serve clients. Here it's important to understand the distinction between a client and a customer. A customer is someone with whom you have a transactional relationship. So, for example, a company such as Walmart might sell goods to a given customer and the customer might not come back. So, anybody who buys something from Walmart is a customer. Whereas a client is someone with whom you have an ongoing relationship, and typically that's what happens in the investment management industry. If you are advising somebody, that person is your client, and the expectation is that you have a long-term relationship with that client. A code of ethics is a central part of any profession. The code of ethics informs and provides assurance to the public that the profession's members will use their specialized skills and knowledge in the service of others and in the best interest of others. In many cases, the code of ethics will be enhanced and clarified through the adoption of standards of conduct, and that's what the CFA Institute does. The CFA Institute Code and Standards are an example of principle-based standards. Generally, standards can either be rule-based or principles-based. The CFA Institute Code and Standards are principle-based. The CFA Institute standards are based on principles of honesty, integrity, transparency, diligence, and placing client interests first. Rule-based standards tend to be more narrowly defined and apply to specific groups or individuals in specific circumstances.